10 Forgotten Muscle Cars of the 1970s That Deserve a Comeback. The 1970s were a wild ride for American muscle cars. As emissions regulations tightened and insurance costs soared, the golden era of horsepower began to fade. But hidden behind the headlines were some incredible machines that just didn't get their moment in the spotlight. Today, we're bringing them back. 10 forgotten muscle cars of the 1970s that absolutely deserve a comeback. Buckle up. 1. 1971. AMC Matador Machine. The AMC Matador Machine was AMC's short-lived but powerful attempt to join the muscle car elite. Most people remember the Rebel machine, but in 1971, AMC tried again with a new body style under the Matador name. The machine package added bold graphics, a beefy suspension, and, most importantly, a 401 cubic inch V8. It was good for 330 horsepower and had serious torque. The styling was unique, leaning into AMC's offbeat design philosophy. It looked like nothing else on the road at the time. Sadly, very few were produced. The Matador was caught between performance and practicality, and the machine package disappeared quickly. But those who know. This thing could fly in a straight line and eat up the quarter mile. AMC's underdog image made it even cooler. Today, surviving examples are rare and highly collectible. If AMC had better marketing, this car might have been a legend. It deserves way more credit than it ever got. Think of it as the muscle car that slipped through the cracks. 2. 1974. Dodge Dart Hang 10. The Dart Hang 10 is one of the weirdest and most fun muscle car variants of the 70s. Based on the Dodge Dart Sport, it was a limited edition trim inspired by California surf culture. You heard that right. It came with surfer-themed decals, bright white paint, and orange and blue striped seats. It even had a fold-down rear seat for extra cargo room. For surfboards, of course. But beneath the beachy vibes was a legit performer. It could be optioned with a 360 cubic inch V8, putting out over 240 horsepower. Not bad for 1974. It wasn't a track monster, but it had style and charm, and that's what made it special. It was part muscle, part cruiser, part conversation piece. Dodge really leaned into the fun aspect with this one. Sadly, it didn't sell well. Most buyers didn't quite know what to make of it. Today, it's a rare oddball that collectors are starting to rediscover. It's the kind of car that makes you smile just looking at it. 3. 1970 Ford Torino Cobra. When people talk about Ford muscle, the Mustang hogs the spotlight. But the Torino Cobra was a real brute. In 1970, it came standard with a 429 cubic inch Thunderjet V8 and could be optioned with the legendary Cobra Jet or even Super Cobra Jet engine. We're talking 370 to 375 horsepower and neck-snapping torque. It was built to be a street sleeper and a NASCAR homologation special. The fastback body gave it sleek lines, and the Cobra badging meant business. Performance was on par with the best of the era. And yet, it never got the fanfare of its pony car cousins. Why? Possibly because it was bigger and more grown-up looking. But on the drag strip or highway, this car moved. The SCJ version with a shaker hood and 4.30 rear end was an absolute monster. It even came with optional drag pack components. A real-deal muscle car that deserves a second look. The Torino Cobra was a predator, and people are finally starting to remember. 4. 1973 Pontiac Ventura Sprint. Think of the Ventura as Pontiac's answer to the Chevy Nova. It was compact, affordable, and offered in several trims. But the Sprint was something different. With the Sprint option, you got a bit more attitude, sporty striping, rally wheels, and most importantly, a V8 engine under the hood. The 350 V8 gave the Ventura some real muscle cred. And while it wasn't a GTO, it shared a lot of the same DNA. The styling was clean, almost understated. That made it a great sleeper. Most people had no idea this little Pontiac could run. It was the kind of car that a high school gearhead could actually afford. Today, it's nearly forgotten. But that's starting to change. The Ventura Sprint is getting attention from collectors who want something different. It's a muscle car you don't see at every show. And that uniqueness makes it even cooler. 5. 1972. Buick GS 455 Stage 1. Buick isn't the first brand that comes to mind when you think of tire-shredding muscle cars, but the GS 455 Stage 1 was a beast in disguise. With a massive 455 cubic inch V8, it made 360 horsepower and a mind-blowing 510 pound-feet of torque. That's still impressive by today's standards. It was Buick's way of saying, don't let the luxury fool you. The GS came loaded with comfort, but could take down Mustangs and Camaros with ease. It was smooth, quiet, until you floored it. Then it became a rocket ship. Stage 1 upgrades included better heads, camshaft, and carburetion. It could run the quarter mile in the low 13s. That's fast. Yet most people overlooked it because it wore a Buick badge. It's one of the best sleeper muscle cars of the era, and one of the most collectible today. If power and comfort are your thing, this car had both in spades. 6. 1976 Plymouth Roadrunner, Volare. By 1976, the muscle car era was fading fast, but Plymouth tried to keep the spirit alive with the Roadrunner, even if it was now based on the compact Volare. That shift in platform didn't help its street cred, but the Roadrunner badge still meant performance, at least in spirit. It came with unique stripes, badging, and a rally suspension to keep things sporty. The optional 360 V8 was the most muscular engine you could get, pushing around 170 horsepower in stock form. Not exactly a fire breather by early 70s standards, but respectable in the smog-choked mid-decade. The car also came with a cool beep-beep horn, paying homage to its roots. Unfortunately, it was heavy, a bit underpowered, and caught in a weird transition phase. Yet there's a certain charm to this oddball. It looked tough and tried hard to be relevant in a time when most automakers had given up. Some even came with T-tops, adding to the cool factor. The Roadrunner Volare is now a true curiosity piece. Few survived, and fewer were preserved. It's an underdog, and that makes it lovable. It's not a muscle monster, but it's a survivor, and in many ways, it represents the last gasp of the muscle car era. 7. 1971. Mercury Cyclone Spoiler. The Mercury Cyclone Spoiler was a wild, aggressive-looking machine that most people have forgotten even existed. With its fastback shape and bold graphics, it looked ready for the racetrack. And that's because it was. Built with NASCAR homologation in mind, the spoiler could be optioned with a 429 Super Cobra jet engine. That meant 375 horsepower, and all the torque you could ever want. It came with the drag pack option and a close ratio 4-speed manual. It wasn't subtle, and it didn't try to be. The car was fast, loud, and unapologetically American. Yet Mercury as a brand never got the same performance respect as Ford or even Dodge. The Cyclone was a cousin to the Torino, but with a unique flair. Its hideaway headlights and aggressive grille made it look mean. It could back up those looks on the street or the Strip. But as the decade moved on, the Cyclone faded into obscurity. Today, finding one is a rare treat. It's a muscle car for those who like to stand out. A true forgotten hero of the early 70s horsepower wars. 8. 1975 Oldsmobile Omega SX. You've probably heard of the Chevy Nova, but few people remember its upscale cousin, the Oldsmobile Omega. And even fewer know about the SX trim, a rare and performance-oriented version that flew completely under the radar. The Omega SX came with a 350 V8 and some upgraded suspension components. It wasn't as wild as a 442, but it had real muscle car attitude in a smaller, lighter package. The styling was clean and classy, with minimal badging. Inside, it had that Oldsmobile luxury touch: fake wood grain, plush seats, and a smooth ride. But under that quiet demeanor was a surprisingly fun car to drive. It had just enough grunt to surprise people at stoplights. The SX was meant to be sporty, not flashy, and that makes it a true sleeper. It also handled better than many of its contemporaries. Unfortunately, the nameplate never caught on like the Nova or Ventura. Most people overlooked it as just another GM compact. But that's what makes it interesting today. If you can find one in decent shape, it's a hidden gem from the twilight years of muscle. A quiet performer, waiting to be rediscovered. 9. 1970 Chrysler 300 Hearst. Now, this is a big car with a big attitude. The 1970 Chrysler 300 Hearst was a special collaboration between Chrysler and Hearst Performance. The same folks known for badass shifters and race parts. Only about 500 of these land yachts were ever built, and under the hood, a 440 cubic inch TNT V8, making 375 horsepower. That's some serious muscle, especially in a car that weighs over 4,000 pounds. It came in only one color combo, spinnaker white with gold accents. The fiberglass hood and deck lid kept weight down, a little, and it had a huge hood scoop to show it meant business. Inside, it was all luxury. Leather seats, power everything, and that signature Hearst shifter. It was the muscle car for executives who didn't want to drive a Mustang. On the highway, it was a rocket ship. Big, brash, and built for straight-line speed. Most people don't even know it existed, but it's easily one of the coolest oddballs Chrysler ever built. A true muscle cruiser. 10. 1973 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454. When you think of the Chevelle SS, most people imagine the iconic 70 or 71 model with cowl induction and stripes. But the 1973 SS 454 is one of the most overlooked versions, and unfairly so. By 1973, the Chevelle had been redesigned with a more rounded, bulkier body. It didn't look as mean, but the power was still there, especially with the 454 cubic inch big block. It made around 245 horsepower due to emissions restrictions, but the torque was massive. This thing could still light up the tires and throw you back in your seat. It came with beefed-up suspension, wider tires, and special SS badging. Inside, it was more refined than earlier models, but still had a performance edge. The 73 was the last year before bumpers got huge and styling got weird. As such, it's kind of a sweet spot for collectors now. It wasn't the peak of Chevelle muscle, but it's better than most remember. And because it's been so overlooked, you can still find these for decent prices. It's the forgotten muscle car of the Chevelle bloodline, and one that's finally getting some long-overdue love. So there you have it. 10 forgotten muscle cars from the 1970s that brought power, style, and attitude, even in tough times. Which one would you bring back if you could? Let me know in the comments, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the world of rare and underrated classics. Until next time, keep it loud, keep it fast, and keep it vintage.